Hello, can you hear me?
Straighten your chair. You can see the masks.
I could earlier.
You want some water? I get you water?
Hey guys, we will just start in like 2 more minutes. I'm waiting for more people to join in. Hi guys. I'm not really sure if y'all can see me. So I'm going to kickstart the workshop now. Sorry if I can't, if you guys are not able to see me. Hi Swati, hi Anmol, hi Richa. We are extremely stoked to have this 6 series workshop with HarperCollins, and the response that we've got is overwhelming. I already have a lot of participants on waiting, but nonetheless, let's start. Swati, do you want to take over? I'm not going to talk much. I'm just literally going to ask. Also, guys, one more thing before we start. I have put all of y'all on mute. So whatever questions y'all have, put it in the chat box over here. All right. And in the last 10-15 minutes of the session, we will pick the questions and they'll answer. So you can write all your questions here. Over to you, Swati.
So sorry, I was mute. So we've got a panel today of two authors, and I'll let them introduce themselves later. But just to give you a background of what I do and what the panel is going to be like, and what we've decided the structure is going to be like. To begin with, I'm the senior commissioning editor for fiction in HarperCollins, and my job is basically to be at the center of the book from the making to pretty much taking it through the process and getting it on the shelves. So, which means manuscript selection, editing, and things like dealing with marketing and dealing with the legal, the contract, etc. So pretty much everything. So that's good. You can ask me later on when we have the Q&A session. You can ask me questions about the process and how it works. And I hope I'll be able to answer most of those questions. And just how we want to do the session today is this. We're going to do it the way a book is made. So from the idea, from where it starts, which is just pretty much in the head of the author, and how it becomes a book. So we take you through the process of when you have an idea, you figure out whether you are what you've got is an idea for a short story, you've got an idea for a novel, maybe you've got an idea for a poem. You have to see what the idea is, and then how it becomes a book, how you take it from the process of editing, etc., to getting it to a publisher, to getting it on the shelves. So we'll take you step by step, and I think that's why we'll begin with the authors. But first, I'll ask Anmol and Richa to introduce themselves.
I
Anmol,
think Richa, if Richa's there, let her go first.
Okay, yeah, sure.
She's far more accomplished.
Oh, I finally unmuted myself. Hi, so thank you for this wonderful session, and I'm here with my cup of tea, which I can't do without, so welcome. I am Richa S. Mukherjee. I'm an author with HarperCollins, and I'm extremely, extremely proud to be one. Just a little bit about myself. I am an ex-journalist and ex-advertising professional, and I finally found my purpose and calling in making up stories and writing books. About a year ago, I finally mustered the courage to give up my job and I do this full time. I hope it works for me. My husband's praying the same. As far as stories are concerned, I think I started writing when I was young, but I wrote my first book, which was a book of poems called Penchant for Prose. Nobody really reads poetry in my house, but I wrote it for myself. So that is where my writing journey started, but my fiction journey started in the very capable and nurturing hands of Swati, who just introduced herself. And it was a book called I Didn't Expect to Be Expecting, which was a humorous take on pregnancy. And it was released in 2017. And then I chose to indulge my multiple personality disorder as an author. And I jumped ship to actually writing a humorous thriller, which is called Kanpur Khufia Private Limited. It was released last year, and I'm happy to share that it's also been picked up for a screen adaptation. So that was released last year. I'm currently waiting and working on my next book, which is part 2 of Kanpur Khufia Private Limited. Of course, authors love to indulge themselves with sequels, and I'm doing the same. So that comes out possibly next year. And my next book, which is a family drama, is out later this year, which again, Swati is working on. I'm not about to leave her coattails anytime soon. So I really hope you have a good session. And frankly speaking, you couldn't be in better hands because I'll try my best. But Swati is one of the most patient and wonderful people I've ever worked with. And Anmol is a wonderful and talented young lady who dons many hats along with being an author. So that was my writing journey. We hope to kickstart yours. And please be ready with a pen and paper because we'll be sharing some useful information along the way. Thank you. Over to you, Anmol.
Awesome. Oh man, that's a wonderful journey. Thank you for praising me along the way, Richa. Well, my name is Anmol Malik, and I would say that my debut novel, which is out now, which is called Three Impossible Wishes, was a long time coming. Firstly, thank you for having me in this session. And secondly, thank you HarperCollins and Swati for absolutely changing my life. And I'll tell you why. It's been around 15 years for me trying to get to this point. So I've studied creative writing from the University of Warwick, which is in England. And I've done a bunch of jobs along the way. One of them was being a junior copywriter at Leo Burnett. I've worked in the creative development department of UTV Disney in India, and I've also been the head of the script department at Yash Raj Films. So my background is predominantly songwriting and writing screenplays, both of which have taught me the economy of writing. So I know when it comes to a book, there's a certain economy, the number of pages and how the story should kind of be paced and move ahead. But it's taken me a long time to get to this point where I could pull out a debut novel. So believe me when I say I understand the importance of writing your very first book and finding the absolute right people who will bring it to life. And I could not be more grateful to HarperCollins, to Anand and Dia, and especially Swati for finding that voice and believing in me and helping Three Impossible Wishes come to life. And the thing is, I am a very filmy person. I absolutely love rom-coms. And by that, I mean, I love Dilwale Dulhania Le Jayenge and Kuch Kuch Hota Hai and Jab We Met and Bridget Jones's Diary. And all of that love has kind of seeped into this book. And I think along the way, what the three of us will try to show is find something that you truly love writing about, and your first book will always be your first baby, because for me, Three Impossible Wishes will always be my first baby. Thank you, Swati, for helping me out with it.
Yeah, of course. I hope I'm not on mute. That was great. So basically, yeah, you've got two really great authors here, guys, because I think they've done what is very difficult to do in the first novel, which is really take it through from that, kernel of the idea to a book, to a complete book. Because one of the things that I think we often face, all of us who've been trying to write and all of us who try to find the story that we stick with, is the sticking with it, kind of like really staying with that story and giving it the beginning, the middle and the end, and seeing it through. So I think that seeing it through and to kind of make sure that you really persist and not give up in the middle and not lose interest, that's difficult. And I think both Anmol and Richa have done it in such a good way. So, okay, so how are we going to do it is, first, let's discuss that idea. Both of you had that kernel of an idea that you knew you wanted to turn into a book. So I think let's start with Richa. Richa, tell me about I Didn't Expect to Be Expecting, and just when you knew you had that idea and how you find, because, I think a lot of people would want to know that here. Do you jot it down? Do you write down every kernel of, thought that you have? How do you take that idea and you realize, this is it, I've got a book? And what kind of advice would you give people here about doing the same?
Sure. So before I get to the book, I just generally wanted to talk about ideas.
Right.
Because I realized early on that, writers are porous and, very sensitive creatures. So, which is why everything in our environment and our circumstances affects what we write and how we write it. So I knew there were a lot of ideas coming in, and I'm a little old school, so I tend to jot it down in possibly 14, 15 diaries all around the house, and I can be seen haunting the corridors at night, freaking out my 6-year-old. So yeah. I knew the ideas were coming. So what I wanted to do was create a sort of process to funnel them. So what I did was, I know I write stories, I write articles, I write books as well. So I created clusters of all those ideas. And at the end of the week, what I do is, it's a lovely, repository of all my ideas, and I can dip, because, you tend to forget because they come at you at the most inopportune times where you can't scribble them down. So,
Yeah.
then it becomes, so I've tried to create a process. So that's as far as ideas are concerned, as far as I'm trying to rein them in, the ones that come to me. Um, Otherwise, in terms of ideation, I think, and that's what, it was contextual. So if you're asking me what I didn't expect to be expecting, it came to me in a very contextual space as well. I was on my maternity break, which tends to be a very productive time for women. All the
I've
creative
heard that, I've got two authors I've worked with who have both written their books during their pregnancy, and they've just, I mean, it seems like a productive time.
Really, and imagine how sad my employers must be. I'm from an advertising agency, and they were like, "You waited for your creativity for your maternity break." So that's when it happened. That's when I wrote it. There was enough fodder and stimulus around me, so it very naturally came to me, and that's when I finished the book. I just want to step back in terms of ideas and how you can find them, because sometimes there are ideas that come to you very naturally. For example, the ones that came to me, but a lot of times you're looking for them. So I like to break this phase up into environmental stimulus, and then what are your experiences and opinions? Because in terms of external stimulus, everything you consume, whether it's OTT, film, news, travel at one point in time, because one of my book ideas came while I was traveling, which we can't do right now. So everything you consume, you're like a sponge. So there's so much of a stimulus around you. That's where a lot of ideas come to you. And then there are things that have been festering in your head. Like, I mean, it's so creditable that Anmol had an idea in her head. She stuck with it for so long. And I'm really enviable, by the way, because I had no such searing idea in my head, all my life. So those are the ones, which you need to stay with and develop over a period of time. One watch out as far as environmental stimulus is concerned is that is available to every single person out there.
Yeah.
So while you might read something very interesting in the newspaper, that doesn't mean you immediately start writing, because 100 other people might. So what you need to be careful about is that the premise and the theme needs to be yours, but obviously that stimulus is what you can consume.
Right. Yeah.
And as far as picking genres is concerned, I honestly think that is also something that will come to you once you start practicing and writing everything you possibly can. You don't have to just jump to a book. And I don't think while it's great to dip into popular genres, I don't think any great writing came out of emulation. So using them as a point of inspiration is great, but then you have to develop your own voice and find the genre you're most comfortable gravitating towards. And you will do that if you're experimenting now.
Yeah, actually, that's an interesting question, Anmol. I think you can answer is finding that voice, because I know when Anmol and I were working in the book together, we had that conversation where her style and her voice was important to her, and she had kind of found it and she stuck with it. So I think writers sometimes get into that trap of reading something great and wanting to write like that, and that's difficult because you can never really write like someone. You'll always be B or the C of that existing voice. So how do you find that unique voice?
I think that kind of ties in somehow with even finding the right idea. And I'll tell you why that is. So I figured out, okay, so I'm a bit of a selfish writer. By that, I mean that I predominantly write for myself. And the reason for that is because I figured out quite early on that writing is a very solitary, very isolating process. Which means that when I find an idea, or when anyone finds an idea, it should not only be exciting for that moment, it should excite you for a very, very long time. And I mean sticking it out with probably a year, because I'm assuming that's how long a good first draft will take. And I'm not saying first draft, I'm saying a good first draft. So that idea has to be something that excites you. For me, usually it is the voice of that idea that excites me. So the narrative style is what keeps me going for a very long time. With Three Impossible Wishes, and I suspect with a lot of the books I will be writing, hopefully in the future, they have to make me smile. Otherwise, I don't think I can stick it out with it. I need to, when I'm writing, I need the scenes to be making me smile. I need the chapters to kind of flow into each other. The writing style, though, I like the point that Richa made that, sometimes the best ideas come to you when you really can't jot them down. But I have a very weird way of jotting down ideas. And I think this comes from my songwriting background. So most songwriters have this little rule that when you compose a song, and if you don't wake up the next morning humming it, it's not a very good song. And that reminds me of when I was a child, and when your grandparents tell you stories, You don't note the stories down. You just remember everything about it. And that's the hallmark of a good story. It's very simple. And I think that's what happens when I'm writing a story. I hardly jot anything down, because when I'm kind of fixing it up in my head, if I can recall 90% of the story, that's when it feels very natural. The flow feels natural. The entire process then just comes down to me putting it down on paper. So I don't actually jot down any of the little ideas. And I try to keep the voice as natural as it is to how I'm speaking, because I want my books to be easy to read. I want a reader to get completely immersed when they're reading my book. And for me, they need to feel like as if they're talking directly to me. And that's how I found my voice.
So, okay, so I know we have a bit of a time crunch and we've got an hour. So I'm gonna go through things which are very specific to what a writer needs and what also the things that a writer experiences. So I think the first thing is characterization. You know, both of you have very strong characters in your books. Richa, both your books have very quirky, very, very different characters. And Anmol, you know, Anya, I mean, you've created Arya and she's pretty much alive on the page. So, you know, can you give us tips and just clues as to how you create that character and how you make it come to life? Because sometimes one of the biggest problems a book has is a flat character, and then you can just not relate with them. So, you know, talk about someone's asked who's Arya, and Arya is the protagonist of, I'm sorry, because I'm her editor, I'm automatically assuming that all of you should, but I'm assuming you've all read
Arya and Vladimir are the protagonists.
Yeah, Arya is the protagonist of Three Impossible Wishes, and she's just this really wonderful, quirky character. And you know, Richa's got 2 books, and both books have very different and very alive, very fleshed out characters. So could you talk about just the process of creating, if not all, then let's just, for the paucity of time, let's talk about the protagonist. How do you make that center figure real? Yeah, sure.
Should I go first?
Yes, please.
So just quickly, a few points on characters. I think we are innately, we're inherently blessed with this quality of, being in several shoes at the same time, because we are role playing on a daily basis. So I think that's why, in various capacities, in various roles in our relationships at work, home, trying to keep it together in some ways and losing it in the other. So we're capable of it. Which is why a lot of characters, especially when you start out, even for me, were autobiographical, which got me into a lot of trouble when people read my book. But it is autobiographical when you start off. However, as you learn how to write, you understand the way you write better, the process, which you adopt. That is when you can move away from these autobiographical characters and find it within you to create new characters. And what I love to do, and I push myself to do, is have complexities within each character, because it's all fine to have character traits and stick with them through the book, but the way you can keep people guessing and on their feet is, whether it's humor, thriller, anything, shades of gray and white, and that's what you like. That's what keeps people interested. Something, I'll just give a live example. As far as I Didn't Expect to Be Expecting was concerned, I drew so much from my own life that I didn't have to think too far. But for Kanpur Khufia Private Limited, I was very, some books you have that clarity from the beginning. I knew very early on that this is in a Bollywood-esque space. So, and this was the first time I was tackling so many characters with quirky in their own right and very different. Which is why what I did was I created a presentation actually. I remember when the screen adaptation was happening, was asked about this. And I said, I have all the characters with me, because I created a 4-5 slide presentation wherein I drew from all the popular OTT, things I had consumed and films, and I could attribute, I could match my characters to popular personalities, and I actually put down. So I went Philip Kotler on them, and I just did and I put down demographics, psychographics, and pinned down every trait of the character, and I put a picture next to it. So somehow through the writing of that book and all its ups and downs, it helped, it kept me on the character track for each of these characters. So I think that is something you can employ. But like I said, everybody has their own techniques. A lot of people don't go about doing, PPTs. Some people do a lot of character emotions, and there are some people who sit in corners and imagine that they're the character, and that's a process for some other people. But it'll develop. But characters are the most fun part, because that is when you're conjuring people and you're God for a bit, So that's I think, other than haggling over book covers and book ideas with you and the title ideas, I think characters is the most fun. So you just have to experiment and try.
For me, characters is kind of, okay, this is a bit weird. I think my writing process is quite haphazard, but I must thank my experience with screenplays for this, because I think when it comes to me writing something, it's born out of scenes. Even Three Impossible Wishes kind of reads like a movie in a book. By that, I mean, I place a lot of importance on the pacing and the turning points of the story. So the story for me constantly needs to keep turning. It needs to keep moving. And the only things that can drive that forward are your characters. So I think Swati can vouch for this, but my book, I started writing it from the middle itself. There's a chapter called Whiskey on Ice. By the way, all the chapters are named after food because I love food. But there's this chapter called Whiskey on Ice. And I didn't know anything about the story. I started writing that chapter because in my head, I got two characters, a boy called Vladimir and a girl called Arya. They are very different from each other, but in that conversation, they kind of just fit together. They're having a walk through some snowy forest, and I could hear their conversation. And I just noted that down. And then working backwards and forming layers around that conversation led me to develop these two characters. So I never actually spent time on these character traits. I just spent time on framing scenes. And I think those scenes, the dynamic in those scenes and how each character responded is what eventually led me to each character's arc. And I think maybe it might be because I still need to develop more experience, but I feel if you rely on your instinct and just trust yourself and write, you don't have to spend too much time forming character traits and figuring out what each character is going to be. If you know your scene well enough, your character is going to naturally respond to those scenes and that stimulus, and naturally, according to that character's growth, you will find the traits kind of shaping up.
Right. So one thing, just to tell you guys that everyone's putting some questions on the side. You can keep leaving your questions there, and we're going to scroll back up, and we'll try to answer as many as we can in the last 10 minutes of the session.
Yeah, I like some of them. How do we actually introduce the character in the book?
Yeah, we've got. I mean, it's all good. Like you can keep putting your questions there. So okay, so we've got two different processes. I think we've got like someone who starts with the scenes, and we've got someone who kind of really does the thing with the character and fleshes it out, etc. So we've got, I think that's one thing that is going to come out as the session progresses. We will have different writers with different styles and processes and the way they work. So, okay, one of the things that I think writers face is finding that central tension in the book. What's going to be your obstacle? What's going to be, because a book that stays the same from beginning to end, I think Anmol, you already covered it to a point where you said that every scene needs to have a twist or a turn. It needs to keep growing. And I think one of the things that you need to do is to find that central plot that hooks you and keeps you interested. Something that will have a realistic resolution, but will also give you enough meat to flesh out a whole book. So is that something that just comes to you? Is that something that you have to experiment with, do a proper structural write, maybe make a blueprint of the book? How does it work for you guys, both of you?
For me, it comes from the logline itself. I know that's a very dangerous word to use. I often don't like mentioning it because it kind of is restrictive.
Let's tell people what a logline is.
A logline is your guiding light. It's like your one line of what your book is about.
Yeah.
Or your story. Like if you look at Notting Hill, how many times do you really tell a rom-com? You know, it's a boy and a girl falling in love. But if you look at the log line of Notting Hill, it's boy and a superstar fall in love. And that immediately sets up the tone of your book. So I think of your movie, I think a log line is something that you keep coming back to again and again. It's like your spinal cord. Right. And I think once you have that just put up right at the start and you remember it, I think that's what helps each of your scene turn. Because you kind of have to know your scene has to make that turn to keep coming back to that log line.
Right. Yeah.
I think that's the importance for me because that came from the whole screenplay background.
Richa, what about you?
So it's very interesting. Anmol mentioned a log line because that's really what I was going to mention as well. That, you know, from drawing from the advertising world as well, there's all these, you know, USPs or one-line propositions that encompass what your entire, you know, what you're selling. That one line that captures the entire essence of your story, and you know, which keeps you to your plot. Because you mentioned about structuring, I'd like to mention that I think I evolved with every book because my first book, I keep saying that it wrote itself because anybody would never let me take a masterclass if they found out how I wrote my first book, because it just essentially, I think, wrote itself. what I did was, the first one was absolutely haphazard. But what I realized with time was that if I did not have a roadmap, because I was writing thrillers, also it's genre specific.
Yeah.
Some stories come to you naturally, whereas you need to know where your story is concluding, and you can write backwards from there. If you don't have that clarity, I find that clarity, now that I'm with every book, I realize that structure is a little important. So for example, you can, if I can take just a minute or two about mentioning a few structural methods. So for example, there's the plain vanilla beginning, middle, end. There's a graph of a story. You've got your characters. You know what's happening in the beginning. You know there's going to be some kind of a friction or a plot or a graph that goes up and down. And then there's a conclusion. And I pretty much, frankly, went with that. Another interesting way of doing it is reverse outline, wherein a lot of people actually write the end first. And my mind was blown last year when I actually saw somebody do that. And she wrote her end, the end of the thriller, and worked backwards. Swati, you know her. So she worked backwards from there. And then there's, for example, other structured methods where a lot of people would clinically like to use. For example, a snowflake method. Please know that this is an academic discussion, and I don't think I'm capable of using the snowflake method, but I'm just telling you that it's like a foundation. You build a foundation, you write your logline or your storyline, you build your characters, then, one by one, you build your plot sequences on top of that. There are other tools called index cards, which people swear by. They break down every scene, every plot, everything they possibly can right till the end. And that's how minute their detailing is. And then there's something that I adopted called the headlight method, which is pathetic, which is wherever your headlights fall, you write as much and then you go forward from there. So whatever works. So I just wanted to throw a little bit of a light on each of these. And I know people who've done a combination of these or one or nothing, but you need to develop, and you need to experience and develop.
I'm going to drop. So there are what Richa said about the snowflake method, or there are lots of different methods in which you can. I mean, there are tools for writers out there. So one of the tools which helps a lot of writers of mine is something called the Wave Maker. I'm going to drop the name on the thing right now while they take other questions, because I think that's a free tool that you can use. It helps you with characterization. It helps you to keep tabs on everything that's going on in your novel. It also helps you to point out, things that you might have left, loose threads, etc. So Wavemaker, it's a free app. You can use it, and it's actually very easy. So that's one of the tools that I thought I'll leave here so that you guys can go check out later. You can also look at similar tools which are made for writers to help them plot their stories. So, okay, so let's move on to something. I think two things in one go. One is I want you to tell me how you face writer's block and how you get back to a story, because I think a lot of people here might have had that experience. If you've had it, how did you cope with it? Are you scared of it if you haven't had it yet? And also, when do you know when your story is done, it's over, it's finished, and now you can send it off? Because that's where we will, segue into the publishing part of things and how you get a publisher and an agent, etc. But when do you know when to stop, and how do you overcome, any kind of either you're bored with it and you don't want to go back to it, you're feeling trapped. How do you get out of that? So yeah, anyone who wants to go first.
Anmol, why don't you?
Should I go first?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. About the writer's block, I don't think you can call yourself a writer if you've never faced it. That fear, that abject fear of a writer's block, I think everybody knows far too well. But I've been very disciplined when it comes to writing. I've had a process that's been in place for the last 10 years. I have to write for 3 hours minimum every day, whether that's before everybody wakes up or after everyone's gone to sleep in the house. And I think what that discipline has done is that it's kind of put my writing a bit on autopilot, which is great. So I can actually bang out a couple of words and get going. It may not be the best, but it's quite important. It's like riyaz, you kind of have to do it every day. But when do you know a manuscript is ready? And that's the more important question, because if you truly love writing, you will manage to overcome your writer's block. You just keep at it, and one day there'll be this inspiration and everything will fall into place. But when you know a manuscript is ready, so it's something I like to call the first draft and a half. I feel the best ideas, the best passion, the most excitement is always contained in your first draft. And the more I start picking at it is when I start having a pretty average second draft. So I think somewhere in the middle of getting that first draft in a little bit of a presentable shape which is your first draft and a half, is when I call it quits on the manuscript. That's when I package it and send it out, because that's the only way I can show the publisher or whoever's involved or whoever I'm pitching to that this is the most exciting aspect of my work. And I think, Swati, the draft that you received from me was the first draft and a half. It was just bundles of ideas, and you could sense that enthusiasm, while you were reading it. And I think most writers, when they keep picking at that first draft, you kind of dull that enthusiasm down. So I don't want to lose that.
Okay, so sorry, Swati, you're saying something?
You're on mute.
Muted.
You're on mute.
So it turns out I can't unmute myself. Sorry.
I thought to play a game.
Yeah, it became sort of sign language a bit. Richa, you want to take this on?
Yes. So as far as writer's block is concerned, I think it's one of those existential Maslow's top hierarchy sort of questions, because I haven't gotten to that yet. Because fortunately or unfortunately, my writing started at a point which was very chaotic. So I have somehow trained myself. Of course, the lockdown period has not been very productive for me for obvious reasons. But I have trained myself, just like Anmol, to pretty much write. I don't have that discipline where I sit where I can, or I don't have the time where I can, with a child in the house and everything going on, where I can write for a number of hours. But I try and wheedle out some time, whether it's before everyone wakes up, or and there are times or sections of the book where I need that silence. So I try to take 2 days where I do the usual tropes of writers and stereotypes, and I go sit in cafes and I structure, and I take those 4 or 5 hours away from the house. And but in terms of process, yes, I try keeping at it, because the day I feel I don't have anything in me, I honestly shut the laptop. Because I feel like, naturally I don't usually have the problem. So if there is a day when I feel that the whole process becomes too encumbered and it's not free and flowing, then I just let it be and I come back to it next day, and it will come. So that's as far as the writer's block is concerned. And of course, I dream of the day when I'm sitting in the hills and writing one book and not having my daughter hang off my leg. But yeah, till then, this is how I'll persevere. Sorry, your second question was about when you know it's complete.
Yeah.
I think that I completely agree with Anmol that the first draft is the one which is infused with the most passion, and it has all of you in it. But what I have learned through the editing process and working with Swati, and I've just realized that the first draft should not be aborted. You must complete it. So if for KKPL, I unfortunately discovered 3/4 down the book that my ending was not making sense and I had to completely change it. But because I knew I wanted to finish the first draft and not, stop my flow, I did complete it in the state that it was, and I went back to it. So what I do is I finish off the first draft. I don't stop there, even if I don't do nitpicking then. But I definitely do about at least 3 or 4 drafts after that, especially because the last couple of times I've been writing thrillers, and even if it's contemporary, my current book is not a strict thriller. I mean, Swati knows this. But I try and take about 3 or 4 drafts, because I think after a certain point in time, you develop blind spots. You don't see the loopholes, you don't see the spelling mistakes, you don't see, and you want to be thorough. I don't want to take HarperCollins or Swati or anybody for granted. So I want to be absolutely thorough when I send something out. So I employ everyone around me. My family hates me, because from my husband to my sisters, and I don't just pick anyone. It's people who I know will be able to do a decent job and look the loopholes and cross the T's and everything. So I take about at least a good 4 or 5 drafts before I send it out.
Right. Okay, so now that your book is complete and you know that it's going to go out there, that's when both of you had very different journeys. So let me for everyone here, let me clear out the ways in which you can approach a publisher. One of the ways is unsolicited submissions, which is you directly get in touch with publishers. You don't have an agent, you don't have an existing relationship with the publisher. It's basically akin to cold calling. So what you do is you look up emails that are already available, any kind of resources or submission websites that are already available online, and you send in your draft. This is the, I would say the riskiest, because there's a chance that your book will automatically go into the slush pile. Because it's not a very good word, the slush pile thing, but it exists. The fact is that because of the number of submissions that come in, a lot of them kind of fall by the wayside, and some of them are great. A lot of excellent books have come out of those unsolicited submissions. So that is one way. It's great if you have an editor's direct contact and you can just write to them directly. Even then, it's difficult. The second is, I think, Anmol's way, which is the agented way. You send that first draft not to the publisher, but you find yourself an agent. And the third way, which is also agented, but there are programs for first-time writers. There are platforms that you can approach, which will discover you and help you get to a publisher, which is Richa's way, which is that she got in touch with Ravinder Singh, the author's Black Ink Publishing program, which basically mentors and guides new authors. And obviously, because she had a great manuscript, her manuscript was selected and it was sent to us and we accepted it. So there are different ways to approach publishers. Anmol, can you talk about your journey of finding an agent, and then we'll get to Richa's journey?
Okay. Firstly, I would like to tell everyone here that never in my wildest dreams would I have approached HarperCollins on my own, because I didn't think I had it in me. I'm extremely shy, and I could never see my book being published by a giant like HarperCollins, ever. There is this one writing community, it's called Bound India. And I had a couple of discussions with them where they kind of led me to my agent, who is this excellent, amazing human being called Kanishka. And Kanishka I didn't expect him to select my manuscript either, because he has some of the greatest manuscripts with him currently that I've ever seen. And I felt far too small to even share it with him. But he not only accepted the manuscript, and he went around pitching it. And I had no idea what to expect from it. So I because it took me, I think, 1.5 years to get my draft ready to the state for it to be sent to publishers. So for me, it was like sending a baby out into the world. And I just left it at that. And then I would like to say that HarperCollins had an excellent response rate. I kind of expected to be hanging for 4 to 5 years and then hear a negative no. But the response time was pretty quick. And it was Swati, in fact, who reached out and basically sent me that one email that changed my life. So it's still surreal that HarperCollins picked it up. But I would have to definitely thank Kanishka and Swati for kind of seeing the merit in that manuscript that probably I didn't see and that I was so afraid to send out. So it was, I think, two of them who did it more than me.
So just to add to Anmol's point, one of the things I think you have to, the thing that Anmol overcame is the main thing, right? You have a good book, but it takes a lot to put it out there, and to think that an agent who already has, like Anmol said, Kanishka is an agent who deals with a lot of books. I mean, he's got a huge list on his. So to overcome that initial hesitation and that initial fear and to kind of go for it, obviously expecting that you might hear a no, because I think that's always it's a buffer. It's sort of a padding, right? You need to remember that you might hear a no, or you might, like Anmol said, hear something after 1 year, 2 years or so. But that, I think, is one thing. And the other thing, Anmol, if you could drop the name of the community that you talked about, because that's something, to find agents, it's just a simple Google search. You'll see a lot of publishing agents out there. There's Siahi, there's Writer's Side, which is Kanishka. There are a lot of different writers, literary agencies who help writers, and they do what Kanishka did with Anmol, which is they find the right publisher for you, they find the right editor for you, because an editor and manuscript also has to be brought together in the rights with the right synergy and relationship. So you have to find that. They also draw up a pitch for you, because a pitch for a book is very important. To that, I think once we've finished the agent part, I'll talk about the proposal and how you send a manuscript to an author. But Richa, you want to talk about your journey with Ravinder?
Yes. And before I forget, Swati, I had a few tools and resources which maybe we can cover a little later that people might not want to note down later. Yeah. So serendipitous, luck, dollops of luck, I can call it all of that, because we all start out very naive. I had no idea. I wrote the book and it went possibly under a pile of diapers. I can't say that I didn't want to publish it, but I did not have the courage. I did not even dare to dream, just like a mole, that I would ever be accepted by any publisher. So as luck would have it, I wrote a story for this competition by Times of India.
Right.
And which was prompts which participants are supposed to write around. And incidentally, I wrote for Ravinders and came in the top 10. And I still remember that evening, I saw him and I cringed because I just could not get myself to walk up. And then just like Frankenstein, I raised my arms, I walked to him and I said, listen, I have a book. I don't know how good it is. This is a tip for the worst elevator pitch ever. Don't ever say this. So I said, I don't know how good it is, but do you want to give it a shot? I know you have a publishing venture. So he said, sure. And about 2 months later, he called me saying he would like to publish me. And then he told me something which made me scream straight for 5 minutes, because he mentioned HarperCollins. And he said that I will never forget that moment. And I still have goosebumps talking about it. So yes, that's how, and I really, really am lucky that I found people who believe in me, because I'm a whimsical writer. And that's another thing, you need to experiment with, shouldn't, I possibly, Swati is going to cover it, but you need to, wait it out and not just send your work to just about anyone, because there are, publishers who publish a certain kind of work. I never thought mine would fit in. So whatever helps, whether it's agents, whether it's a direct approach, because I think publishers are really looking for good work, even though Swati has maybe millions of my manuscripts piled on her table, but I know she goes through it. So you should just give it a shot, and we don't know where it'll land up.
So, okay. So actually, yeah, Richa's right in the sense that I think the main thing is to find yourself the right fit when it comes to an agent, when it comes to a publisher, when it comes to an editor. Because what will happen is, in case you end up sending a blind submission to pretty much everyone, there is a chance that you will be missed more than there is if, say, you find out that a publisher is specifically publishing new voices, debut voices, versus a publisher who doesn't do that at all. And all of this is a lot of research. I think once your writing job is over, your research begins. That research should include things like the agents that who deal with the kind of book you've written with, because even agents have very specific books that they deal with. There are very few agents, I think Kanishk is one of them, who will deal with a cross section of genres. Usually agents are also very specific in what they take on board. Publishers, other than the big publishers, you've got the big trade publishers like Penguin, HarperCollins, etc., who do publish a huge number of books and across genres. But then there are smaller independent publishers who do great work, but they are very specific about what they publish. So do your research in both those things. And finally, I think the big thing is how to send your book. So say you've got a manuscript ready, you need to send a proposal to either an agent or to a publisher directly. You need, the main thing you need is a synopsis. You need to say where your story is going from A to Z in a small, short sort of way. So not an elevator pitch, not a log line, which is a single line pitch, but something longer. Not a blurb of a book, not what you read at the back of the book. That's different. That's to get you intrigued. That's to kind of get a reader on board. But a publisher wants to know that your story is complete, that you have a sense of where it's going. So you need a synopsis, which should be maybe a 1-pager or so. Sometimes you can have a longer chapterization. Honestly speaking, very few publishers, if they're not caught by your synopsis, will read through your chapterization. So actually your synopsis is important, maybe more important than your chapterization. And finally, you need to send at least 3 sample chapters, if not the whole manuscript. Say you've written fiction, try to send the full manuscript, but if you can't, send 3 chapters and send your synopsis and send an author bio. The more there is competition in the market, the more the author bio becomes important. Unfortunately, you need to know a lot of things today, especially if you're looking to write a commercially popular book. You need to know how to do social media. You need to do all of that. That is not to say that debut authors who are not social media friendly don't get published. That's not true. But any bit that you can get your manuscript to get a leg up with, any kind of help that you can give your manuscript, I would suggest give it. So you have, but try not to make your email long, sort of like, don't make it a long cover letter where you're telling the editor pretty much everything about yourself. Try to keep it short, try to keep it very to the point. Your work has to speak for itself, because no matter how your cover letter is, no matter how good your proposal is, in the end, when the editor gets to the actual writing, that's when you will be able to sell yourself. So that's how to send your proposal. I think, and obviously the research. And finally, I think the thing to know is, Anmol and Richa both, tell me about what happened after. Say you got your book, say you hear back from an author, from an editor. What happens after? Can you give me a snapshot of that?
Richa. I'll answer after Richa.
Sorry, I didn't get your question, Swati. So
Like
once
editing. So you say you get you hear back from a publisher. You have to strike a deal. You have to get into all the legalities, etc., the contracts. After that, your editing process begins, right? So for both of you, to begin with, both of you were debut writers, which means that you didn't have an idea of how it was going to go. So if you can just talk about that process, because I think we're nearing towards the end of the actual publishing. And after that, maybe we can go through the many questions that we've gotten there. And I think that'll cover more stuff. But I don't want to get into the editing process right now, because I want to know from the writer how that feels first.
No, I wanted to add something from when it came to the publishing bit, because this is something I think people do need to hear. When it comes to, so I faced a lot of rejections when it's come to various forms of books that I've written. But I just want to tell people that when you are approaching publishers or when you're trying to pitch your work, please don't get disheartened every time you hear a rejection. Because your book has its own destiny, it has its own life, and it's going to attract the absolute right people into its life. For me, eventually it was Bound India, it was Kanishka, it was Swati and Anant and Dia and HarperCollins who understood the quirk of my book, and they kind of preserved it. They preserved the cheekiness and the quirkiness of the book, and I don't think it would have happened under anyone else's care. So just wait it out. If you get your rejections, please don't be disheartened. Just keep writing and keep doing what you love. And I think that's a point that I really wanted to make from the start. I'm done. Now we can move on to the question.
So tell me about the editing process, how it is for the writer, because all writers have to deal with their books being interfered with. In a good way, but at least still interfered with. And it's your baby out in the world who goes to someone else, and it becomes, I know Anmol and I've had like a whole rigorous editing process. So have Richa and I in the first book. I remember there was a lot of back and forth and editing. So how was that for you, Richa?
So when you're done with a book and somebody accepts it, you think you're the cat's whiskers and you know everything. But guess what? You do not know everything. And my pride, which was sitting on the pedestal, came crashing down when I saw the first draft. And I remember with tears in my eyes, I messaged Swati saying, it's a sea of red. Am I really that bad? So, really, it's a great leveler. But later on, you appreciate it. You really appreciate it. Because like I said earlier, while writing, you are so ensconced and immersed in exactly, your own narrative and your story and what you need to get across. You need perspective. And no matter how much you try, unless you have professional people doing it for you, what your editor does for you. And I think for me, that was very interesting. And I really appreciated it, because we went through possibly, and I think I was so embarrassed, but then she helped me understand that it's great writing. It's amazing, but you're missing a central friction point. And I still remember that she told me that. And I said, they've accepted my book when I don't have a central friction point. So they must have seen something in it. It was a great learning process, that where you think that you've done it all is where the process actually starts. Because that's when a large number of eyes are going on it and, figuring out whether it's capable, whether it's good enough. Because, I'm sure Swati is going to throw light on this a little later, but she fights for every book. It's going to sound like an ode to Swati and HarperCollins. That's exactly what commissioning editors do. You have to, Swati will agree. She has to make a case for every single book. So it's not that if it just, suits her fancy and she likes it, she needs to sell it, to the team internally for it to be published, financially, thematically, everything, whether it breaks the clutter. So it's a hard job. And I think there was a lot of hand holding, and Ravinder helped me out. Swati helped me out a lot. Dia, the entire team. And I think that is, my embarrassment at having so many issues dredging up during my edits was assuaged by the fact that the fun part started. So that is the point when when I met my publicist, and at that time it was Percy, right now it's Prateek, and that is when they start, when the picture becomes a reality, that yes, the edits are going on and it's really embarrassing, but there is going
But
to
the
be a
book
final
at the
picture.
end of the rainbow. Yeah.
So then you get to hear about the dates, and then you pinch yourself about 50 times, and then you start working on, and that is the time I just wanted to leave this tip that I was absolutely not on social media.
Yeah.
So I used to put 50 pictures of Facebook every time we travel on Facebook, and every time we travel, and that's it. But then I realized that I needed to make a profile. So I can't say that I have millions of followers at the moment. Anmol has a huge bunch of followers, so that's amazing. But I mean, you have to work at it, because whether it's 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, whatever it is, I started blogging, I started writing, I started, so reaching out to these communities. And when you're inserted yourself in those communities, it helps. It really helps. So you have to start that work as well while all the editing is happening. So I learned a lot, and I think every process each book is as it's as interesting.
So Anmol, do you want to quickly take this question, because then we'll move on to the question answer round, which is now.
My answer is pretty short. It's basically everybody must know how patient Swati is as an editor, because this book of mine was over 800 pages long. I don't know if she remembers it.
Yeah, I remember the first draft.
And it was our job to bring it down to nearly 300 pages. And I remember the first time the draft came back, I was just like, this is not my book, because you get so attached to the book. I'm just like, it's gone. I don't know how to fix it. But I remember Swati's note on nearly every page was, please trust your editors, please trust your editors. And that was a major learning process, because writing a book is very, very different when it starts becoming a reality. And I don't think I believed it was a reality until I got an email that said, this is your book cover.
Yeah.
What do you think about it? And I was so overwhelmed. I think I started crying, and can I please tell you, I haven't actually seen my book cover properly until I started promoting.
I haven't either. I haven't had none of the books that have come out in the last 3 months I've managed to see. Usually, thankfully, I mean, fortunately, the editor ends up seeing it first, but now suddenly everything's digital and it just doesn't, but it'll get there. We'll get it again.
Because I was crying. The entire picture looked blurred. I just, in my tears, typed out, I said, it's perfect, it's beautiful. And I sent it out, because for me, it was a really big deal. When you see the book cover is when it hits you how many people are behind this baby. This baby is not yours. It belongs to a lot more people who brought it to life. And well, I released Impossible Wishes with you guys during the lockdown, and it's been a complete learning experience, and it's been a massive hustle, and I've loved every second of it. So I think nothing prepares you for releasing your debut book. Nothing can.
Yeah, I think that's the word. It's hustle. It's basically just not giving up and knowing that you want to get it out there and just kind of sticking with it. In fact, sometimes your first book might not be your first book. You might have to write the second book, which gets accepted, and then you have that first book waiting because it got rejected by, I don't know, 50,000 publishers. So that also happens. So I think the idea is how long and how much will you stick with it. So okay, let's start with the first question. I think who is Arya we've already tackled. So how do we actually need to introduce the characters in the book? Do both of you want to take it? I guess we'll have to do one by one now. So yeah.
I don't mind.
Yeah, say.
So there's something that it's called a character dump. So what people tend to do is, and something I was doing, and I have do that with my current books, is that you have this penchant for wanting to say everything about a character and say everything about the history and geography of that character in the first few pages. And that is something that is called, basically a historical dump of the character. So when you're introducing a character, I realized that there are ways in which you can introduce all your characters over many chapters. All of them don't have to make center stage in the first chapter. And that actually helps you create a world bit by bit. And that makes the reading interesting as well. So as far as character introduction is concerned, I mean, I hope that helps, because you can do it over a period of time.
Yeah, I think in fact, one of the things to do is make sure you don't overpopulate your book. Because a lot of times keeping track of every character, so you say, your book has the number of characters, say in an Anna Karenina or War and Peace, you're going to need those 5 or 6 introductory pages just introducing the characters. So know what your limit is and know which characters are dispensable, because what happens with authors sometimes is they grow very close to their characters. So, if an editor comes to you and tells you, we don't need that character anymore. It's going to hurt, but chances are they are saying it because it's getting overwhelming. So you also need to have the right number of characters for your book. And I mean, obviously the writer is the best person to know that, but I think if you have gotten yourself an editor, trust your editor also, like Anmol said, because sometimes a second eye on the book will tell you, a second pair of eyes on the book will tell you how there are problems that you might not be able to spot. Okay, so next question is, how do we write a book on short stories? So I mean, that's the thing of finding your voice, right? What Richa said in the beginning, that you need to experiment. You need to see if you are a short story writer, which means you have an idea that finishes in a few pages, maybe it's an 8,000 word idea, or it's a 5,000 word idea. There's a format for everything. There's, if you're writing flash fiction, you can write a story in 100 words. If you're writing, or 1,000 words. If you're, microfiction, you write in 100 words. Flash fiction, you write in 1,000 words. You'll find the voice and the kind of style you're good with when you keep experimenting with what you're doing. So I think in the first go, it's tough to figure out what you're the best at. And if you're writing a book of short stories, guys, from a publisher point of view, I would say make sure there's a single thread that connects everything. I don't mean to say everything needs to be exactly the same. All of them don't need to be love stories, all of them, but find your thread, find the reason all of these short stories are connected in a single book, because otherwise all you've gotten is anthology. You haven't actually gotten a collection. So that's important, to find a common thread between your stories.
Just to add to that, Swati, if it's hard enough to publish, and it's hard to sell as a something to publish, even to publishers. So what nowadays there's this of anthologies, right?
Right.
There's a whole lot of publishers, and individuals who are publishing anthologies. So you might as well, test the waters with publishing your story, making your story a part of it, see the feedback, see the process of how a lot of these blogging communities or these writers or publishers are publishing the short stories, and what the reaction to anthologies, and then go ahead and write a whole bunch of, like a whole book of short stories. So
that's a good, that's actually a very good point, because that also gives you a process, a sense of the process, and it also tests your material out there for other people before you kind of jump in and write 5 of them or 8 of them. You can test your material on already existing communities. So, okay, what process does a book go through in terms of editing and publishing for a collection of short poems? There is very little difference between the process of editing for whatever kind of fiction or poetry or non-fiction you're writing, in the sense that there are 3 major steps. The first major step is what both Richa and Anmol have been talking about when they said, I sent back a lot of comments and all those things. That's your primary edit, which is you have sent your raw manuscript to your editor. They read it, they point out things like the structure is not there yet, or there's that friction that's missing, or you need to add or subtract characters. This is something called a structural or a primary edit, where I'll give suggestions. I'll rarely say anything other than, I rarely do anything other than give suggestions. I will not interfere that time. So there won't be any actual editing line by line. It'll just be a couple of to-dos, or a bunch of suggestions to the author to go through, reject, accept. There would be obviously some amount of conversation there between the editor and the writer. So that's your primary edit. When the writer has finished doing that, they send back the manuscript. It goes through something called a copy and line edit, which takes care of things like grammatical issues that might have crept in, line edits to clean out a sentence that could be shorter, crisper, so all that stuff. That's your copy edits. Those go back to the writer with track changes. They look at it, they accept what they like. They send back a bunch of the manuscript to some places rejected, and they tell you why they rejected it. Now what you've got is after all this, you've got a ready manuscript, but it hasn't gone through proofreading, which is it has to go through its final cleanup. So then it's sent to the proofreader. They basically correct everything from spelling errors to punctuation errors to maybe spacing errors in the typesetting. Finally, that's done, and the book goes through a final read, and then it goes to press. So these are the 3 major sections. For a non-fiction, it will go through fact-checking, research that will come somewhere between your copy edit and your proofreading. It'll go through indexing, which is a huge process. Indexing takes ages. And for poems, again, similar, except maybe I don't see too many copy and line edits happening in poetry. I don't personally edit poetry. But of course, line edits mean you change a sentence. And in poetry, that's more difficult. So that's the three steps that will always happen to your book. After that, there'll be certain differences between publishing houses and how they approach it. So I think that takes care of the process in terms of what's going to happen to your book. Advice for teen writers, guys. I think Anmol, you're a good person to take this.
Yeah. I had my eye on this question since the pickup point. I wanted to ask advice for teenage writers or advice for young, people writing young adult novels?
Let's do both.
Okay.
Just to cover our ground.
Okay. Yeah. So for teenage writers, the one piece of advice I'd love to give is please be fearless when you're writing. Because I find that when you're in your teen years, you're not as bogged down by the world and you're not that tainted by society yet. Your ideas are a lot more larger than life and your brain is moving in all sorts of directions. So write fearlessly. Just don't think too much, no matter what the idea sounds like, how crazy it might seem to you. But also, please go through your favorite fan fictions, and whatever has made you cringe in that fan fiction, please don't repeat it in your book. Because this is coming from someone who used to love writing a lot of fan fiction, and the very traditional boy with blonde hair and blue eyes and leans down to kiss you and all that will one day make you cringe. So please refrain from it. I think that is an advice I would like to give a teenage writer. For writing young adult books though, anything that keeps you invested, anything that makes you could make it a rom-com, you could make it a Princess Diaries and a Bridget Jones Diary, or you could make it The Hunger Games, or you could even make it Harry Potter. But that entirely depends on the universe you're willing to create. So there's no advice I can give a writer because a writer is someone who makes their own rules. So I would just say write fearlessly and just choose something that you're very excited about. That's how I've done most of my writing.
So I have just been told that because we are on a time limit, this meeting might end abruptly. So let's pick one final question. Okay. So Anmol and Richa, can you please put down whatever tools that you guys talked about on the thing so that we don't miss anything? And guys, just to wrap it up, I think we can do, you can definitely do simultaneous submissions to multiple publishers. That was one question that can be answered quickly. The word count of a manuscript someone's asked about, that is basically, for a novel, it's about 60,000 to 70,000 words average, usually 300 pages or so. So that's one thing that we can answer quickly. And I think format we've covered pretty much. Do you guys want to take in the final one, which is, Richa said she was going to mention some useful tools and tips specifically. Would love to hear her.
Sure. So if you're missing the inspiration and you have writer's block, I think it's something very interesting called NaNoWriMo, if you've heard of it. It's the National Novel Writing Month, which happens in November. And there's a lot of people, setting you prompts, and there's writing prompts, and it just basically pushes you to do a first draft of anything you want, whether it's you want to complete it or not. So there's NaNoWriMo, which you might want to check out. There's a lot of Wattpad. There's a whole Wattpad community. I don't know if you've heard of it, but there's a lot of interesting content there for consuming and seeing what people are writing and also participating in their contest. So there's that. I think in terms of writing tools, everybody must have heard of Scrivener, which is very popular amongst authors, and it helps you organize your thoughts and write, systematically. And so Scrivener is interesting. But there's others that I've heard of, which I haven't personally used, but I've heard a lot of my author friends talk about, which is something called the Right Brain and Blind Write. So these are free resources which basically help you capture your thoughts as and when they come. They're almost like online diaries, and then later they help you write. In terms of books, I honestly think I don't read as much about writing, but the ones that I found interesting was there's a book called The Plot Whisperer,
right,
which you might want to check out. And of course, there's a very popular one called Stephen King on Writing.
On writing, yeah. Everyone please check it out. It's great.
Yes.
I'm putting all the stuff that we've discussed here so that people can, we've also got Anmol who talked about, I think, Anmol, what was yours? The Bound...
Bound India?
Bound India, and then we've
Yeah.
got so guys, for your agents and your publishers, we don't need to list it down because it's literally just a small Google search. A lot of places have done great listicles about the best agents, etc. So I think that's pretty much it. Lots of questions we couldn't answer, so sorry about that, but I hope we got a lot of them answered during our conversation. And I think we should say bye now before we get shoved out by Zoom.
Yes.
So yeah, thank you everyone for joining us. So Anmol, Richa, do you want to have the last words?
I'm an author, so I have to leave it on a very obvious philosophical note, something drawing from what Anmol said. I was hearing this chat by Elizabeth Gilbert the other day, and she was talking about the courage for writing. You know, the childish, enviable kind, where you don't really bother about how horribly they build their Legos or what people are laughing behind their backs about their horrendous drawings. So
Yeah.
find the courage, and then everything else will flow from there. And thank you so much for this session and joining in.
In fact, I just put down one other book here called Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert, which talks a lot about ideas and how to have faith in your ideas. So that's another book that you guys can check out. Anmol?
Yes, I would like to tell everybody who's watching, firstly, thank you for hearing us talk for the last 1 hour. Thank you, Richa and Swati. You've been absolutely wonderful. Thank you, LBB and Prateek, for organizing this in HarperCollins. But I would like to leave this by saying, please don't listen to so much advice, guys. Just write for the joy it brings you.
I agree.
Because that's
yeah.
what's going to good.
Definitely. Like, nothing is a right or wrong. Like, you know, should you write on paper? I think someone asked, should I write on paper or on the comp?
Yeah.
Nothing.
Like, I don't
just write.
I don't think I'm in any way qualified to give others advice. But if I could give one piece of advice, it would be, please just write for the joy it brings you and for the fire it sparks within you. And if you love what you do, you're in a good place already.
Yeah.
My husband says, other than walls, I write everywhere. So yeah, don't write on your walls, but write everywhere else, wherever you can.
I think that's great. Thank you, everyone. And that's us signing off, I think.
Okay, guys. Thank you so much. Thank you, Anmol. Thank you, Richa. Thank you, Swati, so much.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Small talk.
Likewise. And guys, just go and check our next article. The next workshop is happening on Sunday at 2 p.m. So you all can go and register ASAP.
Yeah.
Thank you again. Bye, guys.
Guys, bye.
Bye.
Bye.